Hi everyone, and welcome back to our reading of Five Children and It by E. Nesbit. We left off last time after the children's last wish made everybody want their baby brother. So, let's continue and find out what happens next. Chapter 4. Wings. The next day was very wet, too wet to go out, and far too wet to think of disturbing a sand fairy so sensitive to water that he still, after thousands of years, felt the pain of once having his left whisker wetted. It was a long day, and it was not till the afternoon that all the children suddenly decided to write letters to their mother. It was Robert who had the misfortune to upset the inkwell, an unusually deep and full one, straight into that part of Anthea's desk where she had long pretended that an arrangement of gum and cardboard painted with Indian ink was a secret drawer. It was not exactly Robert's fault. It was only his misfortune that he chanced to be lifting the ink across the desk just at the moment when Anthea had got it open, and that same moment should have been the one chosen by the lamb to get under the table and break his squeaking bird. There was a sharp, convenient wire inside the bird, and of course the lamb ran the wire into Robert's leg at once, and so, without anyone's meaning to, the secret drawer was flooded with ink. At the same time, a stream was poured over Anthea's half-finished letter, so that her letter was something like this. Darling Mother, I hope you are quite well, and I hope Granny is better. The other day Then came a flood of ink, and at the bottom these words in pencil. It was not me who upset the ink, but it took such a time clearing up, so no more, as it is post time. From your loving daughter, Anthea. Robert's letter had not even been begun. He had been drawing a ship on the blotting paper while he was trying to think of what to say. And of course, after the ink was upset, he had to help Anthea to clean out her desk, and he promised to make her another secret drawer, better than the other. And she said, well, make it now. So it was post time, and his letter wasn't done, and the secret drawer wasn't done either. Cyril wrote a long letter, very fast, and then went to set a trap for slugs that he had read about in the Homemade Gardener. And when it was post time, the letter could not be found, and it was never found. Perhaps the slugs ate it. Jane's letter was the only one that went. She meant to tell her mother all about the Psammead. In fact, they had all meant to do this, but she spent so long thinking how to spell the word that there was no time to tell the story properly, and it is useless to tell a story unless you do tell it properly. So she had to be contented with this. My dear mother dear, we are all as good as we can, like you told us to, and the lamb has a little cold, but Martha says it is nothing. Only he upset the goldfish into himself yesterday morning. When we were up at the sandpit the other day, we went round by the safe way where the carts go, and we found her. Half an hour went by before Jane felt quite sure that they could none of them spell Psammead, and they could not find it in the dictionary either, though they looked. Then Jane hastily finished her letter. We found a strange thing, but it is nearly post time, so no more at present for your little girl. Jane. P.S. If you could have a wish come true, what would you have? Then the postman was heard blowing his horn, and Robert rushed out in the rain to stop his cart and give him the letters. And that was how it happened that, though all the children meant to tell their mother about the sand fairy, somehow or other she never got to know. There were other reasons why she never got to know, but these come later. The next day Uncle Richard came and took them all to Maidstone in a wagonette, all except the lamb. Uncle Richard was the very best kind of uncle. He bought them toys at Maidstone. He took them into a shop and let them all choose exactly what they wanted, without any restrictions about price, and no nonsense about things being instructive. It is very wise to let children choose exactly what they like, because they are very foolish and inexperienced, and sometimes they will choose a really instructive thing without meaning to do so. This happened to Robert, who chose, at the last moment and in a great hurry, a box with pictures on it of winged bulls with men's heads, and winged men with eagles' heads. He thought there would be animals inside, the same as on the box. When he got it home, it was a Sunday puzzle about ancient Nineveh. The others chose in haste, and were happy at leisure. Cyril had a model engine, and the girls had 2 dolls, as well as a china tea set with forget-me-nots on it, to be between them. The boys between them was bow and arrow. Then Uncle Richard took them on the beautiful Medway in a boat, and then they all had tea at the beautiful confectioner's, and when they reached home it was far too late to have any wishes that day. They did not tell Uncle Richard anything about the Psammead. I do not know why. and they do not know why, but I dare say you can guess. The day after Uncle Richard had behaved so handsomely was a very hot day indeed. The people who decide what the weather is to be, and put its orders down for it in the newspapers every morning, said afterwards that it was the hottest day there had been for years. They had ordered it to be warmer, some showers, and warmer it certainly was. In fact, it was so busy being warmer that it had no time to attend to the order about showers, so there weren't any. Have you ever been up at 5 o'clock on a fine summer morning? It is very beautiful. The sunlight is pinky and yellowy, and all the grass and trees are covered with dew diamonds, and all the shadows go the opposite way to the way they do in the evening, which is very interesting and makes you feel as though you were in a new other world. Anthea woke at 5. She had made herself wake, and I must tell you how it is done, even if it keeps you waiting for the story to go on. You get into bed at night and lie down quite flat on your little back, with your hands straight down by your sides. Then you say, I must wake up at 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, or 9, or whatever the time is that you want. And as you say it, you push your chin down on your chest, and then whack your head back on the pillow. And you do this as many times as there are ones in the time you want to wake up at. It is quite an easy sum. Of course, everything depends on your really wanting to get up at 5, or 6, or 7, or 8, or 9. If you don't really want to, it's all of no use. But if you do, well, try it and see. Of course, in this, as in doing Latin proses or getting into mischief, practice makes perfect. Anthea was quite perfect. At the very moment when she opened her eyes, she heard the black and gold clock down in the dining room strike 11, so she knew it was 3 minutes to 5. The black and gold clock always struck wrong, but it was all right when you knew what it meant. It was like a person talking a foreign language. If you know the language, it is just as easy to understand as English, and Anthea knew the clock language. She was very sleepy, but she jumped out of bed and put her face and hands into a basin of cold water. This is a fairy charm that prevents your wanting to get back into bed again. Then she dressed and folded up her nightdress. She did not tumble it together by the sleeves, but folded it by the seams from the hem, and that will show you the kind of well-brought-up little girl she was. Then she took her shoes in her hand and crept softly down the stairs. She opened the dining room window and climbed out. It would have been just as easy to go out by the door, but the window was more romantic, and less likely to be noticed by Martha. I will always get up at 5, she said to herself. It was quite too awfully pretty for anything. Her heart was beating very fast, for she was carrying out a plan quite her own. She could not be sure that it was a good plan, but she was quite sure that it would not be any better if she were to tell the others about it. And she had a feeling that, right or wrong, she would rather go through with it alone. She put on her shoes under the iron veranda, on the red and yellow shining tiles, and then she ran straight to the sandpit and found the Psammead's place and dug it out. It was very cross indeed. It's too bad, it said, fluffing up its fur as pigeons do their feathers at Christmas time. The weather's Arctic, and it's the middle of the night. I'm so sorry, said Anthea gently, and she took off her white pinafore and covered the sand fairy up with it, all but its head, its bat's ears, and its eyes that were like a snail's eyes. Thank you, it said. That's better. What's the wish this morning? I don't know, she said. That's just it. You see, we've been very unlucky so far. I wanted to talk to you about it, but would you mind not giving me any wishes till after breakfast? It's so hard to talk to anyone if they jump out at you with wishes you don't really want. You shouldn't say you wish for things if you don't wish for them. In the old days, people almost always knew whether it was Megatherium or Ichthyosaurus they really wanted for dinner. I'll try not to do so, said Anthea, but I do wish. Look out, said the Psammead in a warning voice, and it began to blow itself out. Oh, this isn't a magic wish. It's just, I should be so glad if you'd not swallow yourself out and nearly burst to give me anything just now. Wait till the others are here. Well, well, it said indulgently, but it shivered. Would you, asked Anthea kindly, would you like to come and sit on my lap? You'd be warmer, and I could turn the skirt of my frock up around you. I'd be very careful. Anthea had never expected that it would, but it did. Thank you, it said. You really are rather thoughtful. It crept onto her lap and snuggled down, and she put her arms around it with a rather frightened gentleness. "Now then," it said. "Well then," said Anthea, "everything we have wished has turned out rather horrid. I wish you would advise us. You are so old, you must be very wise." "I was always generous from a child," said the Sand Fairy. "I've spent the whole of my waking hours in giving, but one thing I won't give, and that's advice." "You see," Anthea went on, "it's such a wonderful thing, such a splendid, glorious chance. It's so good and kind and dear of you to give us our wishes, and it seems such a pity it should all be wasted, just because we are too silly to know what to wish for." Anthea had meant to say that, and she had not wanted to say it before the others. It's one thing to say you're silly, and quite another to say that other people are. "Child," said the Sand Fairy sleepily, "I can only advise you to think before you speak." "But I thought you never gave advice." "That piece doesn't count," it said. "You'll never take it. Besides, it's not original. It's in all the copybooks." "But won't you just say if you think wings would be a silly wish?" "Wings," it said. "I should think you might do worse. Only take care you aren't flying high at sunset. There was a little Ninevite boy I heard of once. He was one of King Sennacherib's sons, and a traveller brought him a Psammead. He used to keep it in a box of sand on the palace terrace. It was a dreadful degradation for one of us, of course. Still, the boy was the Assyrian king's son, and one day he wished for wings and got them. But he forgot that they would turn into stone at sunset, and when they did he fell onto one of the winged lions at the top of his father's great staircase. And what with his stone wings and the lion's stone wings, well, it's not a very pretty story. But I believe the boy enjoyed himself very much till then." "Tell me," said Anthea, "why don't our wishes turn into stone now? Why do they just vanish?" "Autre temps, autre mors," said the creature. "Is that the Ninevite language?" asked Anthea, who had learned no foreign language at school except French. "What I mean is," the Psammead went on, "that in the old days people wished for good, solid, everyday gifts, mammoths and pterodactyls and things, and those could be turned into stone as easy as not. But people wish such high-flying, fanciful things nowadays. How are you going to turn being beautiful as the day, or being wanted by everybody, into stone? You see, it can't be done, and it would never do to have two rules, so they simply vanish. If being beautiful as the day could be turned into stone, it would last an awfully long time, you know, much longer than you would. Just look at the Greek statues. It's just as well as it is. Goodbye, I'm so sleepy." It jumped off her lap, dug frantically, and vanished. Anthea was late for breakfast. It was Robert who quietly poured a spoonful of treacle down the lamb's frock, so that he had to be taken away and washed thoroughly directly after breakfast. And it was, of course, a very naughty thing to do, yet it served two purposes. It delighted the lamb, who loved above all things to be completely sticky, and it engaged Martha's attention so that the others could slip away to the sandpit without the lamb. They did it, and in the lane Anthea, breathless from the hurry of that slipping, panted out, "I want to propose we take turns to wish. Only, nobody's to have a wish if the others don't think it's a nice wish. Do you agree?" "Who's to have first wish?" asked Robert cautiously. "Me, if you don't mind," said Anthea apologetically, "and I've thought about it, and it's wings." There was a silence. The others rather wanted to find fault, but it was hard, because the word wings raised a flutter of joyous excitement in every breast. "Not so dusty," said Cyril generously, and Robert added, "Really, Panther, you're not quite such a fool as you look." Jane said, "I think it would be perfectly lovely. It's like a bright dream of delirium." They found the Sand Fairy easily. Anthea said, "I wish we all had beautiful wings to fly with." The Sand Fairy blew himself out, and the next moment each child felt a funny feeling, half heaviness and half lightness, on its shoulders. The Psammead put its head on one side and turned its snail eyes from one side to the other. "Not so dusty," it said dreamily. "But really, Robert, you're not quite such an angel as you look." Robert almost blushed. The wings were very big, and more beautiful than you can possibly imagine, for they were soft and smooth, and every feather lay neatly in its place. And the feathers were of the most lovely mixed, changing colours, like the rainbow or iridescent glass, or the beautiful scum that sometimes floats on water that is not at all nice to drink. "Oh, but how can we fly?" Jane said, standing anxiously, first on one foot and then on the other. "Look out," said Cyril, "you're treading on my wing." "Does it hurt?" asked Anthea with interest, but no one answered, for Robert had spread his wings and jumped up, and now he was slowly rising in the air. He looked very awkward in his knickerbocker suit. His boots in particular hung helplessly and seemed much larger than when he was standing in them. But the others cared but little how he looked, or how they looked for that matter, for now they all spread out their wings and rose in the air. Of course, you all know what flying feels like, because everyone has dreamed about flying, and it seems so beautifully easy. Only, you can never remember how you did it, and as a rule you have to do it without wings in your dreams, which is more clever and uncommon, but not so easy to remember the rule for. Now the 4 children rose, flapping from the ground, and you can't think how good the air felt as it ran against their faces. Their wings were tremendously wide when they were spread out, and they had to fly quite a long way apart so as not to get in each other's way. But little things like this are easily learned. And that's where we leave off for today. Join us next time to find out how the children put their new wings to use. Thanks for listening.